Greetings, golf fans, and the Big D is back with the first of my Open Championship reviews. Before I bring in my friend from north of the border, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page where we're bringing out the leather this week. Also, check out the Big D podcast for all the audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So, joining us, the second biggest Jacksonville Jaguar fan next to me, and Stokastic and DraftKings, Geoff Ulrich, or is he has changed his Twitter handle for this weekend. A Hoylake matey, not a Hoy matey, but a Hoylake matey.
That's right.
With the Open Championship at Hoylake or Royal Liverpool, if you prefer. So, Geoff, I can't believe it's Open Championship week.
That's right. Ahoy to you, Dylan. I can't believe it's Open Championship either, man. I mean, fourth major of the year. It's late July. I mean, kind of sucks in a way, but in another way, I mean, golf is year round. We got the fall series coming up too in the playoffs. So I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to this one. It's been a really interesting year and lots of storylines. And the more I dive into the course, I'm actually pretty interested to see how Royal Liverpool plays this year.
Oh, yeah, because there've been some changes. I mean,
the
Paul 510th has now become it was a Paul 72 at the 2014 Open. It's now going to play at a Paul 71. The Paul 510th has now become a long Paul 410th. There's a Paul 317th, which is going to confuse the heck out of Paul 317th, which is going to play interesting because we've seen short Paul 3s at all majors provide excitement. I mean, don't tell anyone about the Paul 312 at Augusta or Paul 3, short Paul 3 at Brookline for the Open last year.
Right. They did change a hole, but it is still going to play as a par 72. So I can't remember why that is. If maybe they just rerouted something else, but yeah, it's going to play around 7,300 yards, just over. There's some really interesting, setups. One of the par threes plays like 130 yards, but it's a really small green. It falls off into like the cliffs and stuff, from what I remember. I can't remember if there's OB on that hole, but yeah, there's internal out of bounds stakes. That's one thing that really makes it a unique course. There's these fields that jut out almost into the fairway, and if so it's almost like they're in the rough. And if you hit it there, even though you're just off the fairway, it's basically an OB. So it's these penalty areas that make it interesting too. But yeah, a little bit narrower course than you'd see at a normal Open. I think one correlation I made just from the scoreboard from 2014 was just, there's a lot of players who did well at the Players Championship who played well there that year. So I think it actually sets up a lot similar in some respects, some high stress shots, but also just like a shorter, more technical course.
Yeah, you mentioned players. I mean, last year's Players Champ happened to win the Open, that being Cameron Smith.
That's a good point.
And also, I think guys who played well in windy conditions, because guys from Australia tend to do well at the Open.
Yep.
Open guys from Texas tend to do well because they can control the ball, whether it's a downwind shot or into the wind shot.
Agreed, man. I mean, I think that the Florida players are also, something to look at. And look, like it goes both ways. Like we've seen Alex Noren, Fleetwood, a lot of Englishmen, like they like the Honda Classic, right? And they like the players too. We see the Englishman guys pop up there. So I think that Florida form is something, to look at. Guys who long-term just always play well in that swing.
Valspar.
They tend to kind of sometimes pop up at the Open too.
Valspar.
Yep. I mean, just that whole stretch, really. Bay Hill, maybe we should be looking into Bryson this week. I don't know. Maybe that's a guy we'll get to.
Oh, Tyrrell Hatton.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to be on Tyrrell Hatton this week for sure. So I think, he was in contention. A lot of people were on him last week. Interested to see what he does. Hatton he plays out a really good year. I don't know. It's tough. You can't bet all the guys in that range or anything or play them all for DFS, but I would, I wouldn't put anyone off getting some kind of exposure to Haddon. He's had a really good year. It's just really, do you want to bet him over Fleetwood? Do you want to bet him with Fleetwood? Xander's at plus 2,500 on DraftKings. I'm just looking right now. Like, these are good names. So it's an interesting week. Definitely that 20 to 30 range. I mean, I personally have already bet two guys in that range, and I think that that's probably a good starting point, especially if you're not going to take the dive on Scheffler or Rory. So,
I bet one, and I'll wait till the end to announce my guy. But
okay,
seemingly every time an Open Championship, the first thing we look at is the weather. And to be honest with you, I just looked at the weather, and I think it's going to be a wet one, and the wet one in the jolly old England this weekend. So maybe that means good mud ball play. And I'm thinking, is this the week Ricky Fowler finally joins the major club after congratulates every other player winning majors?
I mean, look, Ricky's playing well enough to win a major right now. I don't think there's any question. Like, again, I mean, the form is there, like the approach game has been there with Ricky. It's just a question of like to me, it's not that I don't think that he can win, but in terms of exposure and betting and DFS, we're talking about, like Ricky is basically at the peak right now. He's 9,800 on DraftKings for DFS. He's plus 2,500 on the sportsbook there. I think you're seeing his number potentially drift down a little bit. I think he was plus 2,000 to open on the odds. But in that range, even at plus 2,500, like you're taking him, like Colin Morikawa is a plus 3,500. Ricky's the same price as Xander. These aren't schlubs. Like, these are really elite players. And to me, I just don't think it's a good enough price we're getting. This isn't the US Open where he's 60 to 1. You're really paying a premium. So to me, like if you were on Ricky and you want to give him one more week, I think it would be okay. But personally for me, not necessarily the player I'll be diving in on at that price. If Fowler kind of beats me at plus 2,500, that's fine. I'll take my lumps with Fleetwood. I mean, you can make a similar argument there, but I just like the way Fleetwood's played of late. I think he's really trending to something, and I think that the links and this being the Open, you can also just find him at a bit better price right now. I mean, he's 2,800 on DraftKings. I know you can probably find a 3 on plus 3,000 on Fleetwood if you like. He's cheaper on DraftKings too for DFS, so I'm kind of leaning Fleetwood there between the two. But I like both those guys a lot, and would not sadden me if either one won.
You think Tommy Fleetwood could win at home?
Why not? Sure, he's playing great. Absolutely.
I mean, he's like second. Every time I watch Fleetwood play, he's T2, T3. I'm like, of course he's going to. Everybody's going to want him to win, just like a Roy at a Royal Portrush a few years ago. And what happened? Roy didn't even make the cut.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, look, hey, Fleetwood's played a lot of Opens, and he's played them in England before. I don't think this is necessarily like, a new thing for him at this point. I mean, I don't think it's got the sort of narrative that we had with Rory when it was in Northern Ireland, a poor rush. I just think that Fleetwood's had a really good year, and that everything in his game is piping right now, and I just think that the conditions, he just plays so well in the wind. He's got that low piercing ball flight. The around the green, the putter's been better. I think this represents a really good chance for him. I have no problem taking one more shot with him here. But I do like him. But there's other players in this range. Jordan Spieth is a fantastic Open Championship player. Like I said, like Xander at plus 25. I know that there's a plus 3,000s out there on Patrick Cantlay. Xander, like, it's funny because everyone at the first few majors of the year, oh, this is the time for Cantlay and Schauffele. But now we're getting better prices on them, and it feels like they're not getting talked about as much. So, I'm going to get exposure to at least one of those players. It's probably going to be Cantlay for me, just because I think I can find a better number. And I'm not really too worried about the fact he missed the cut last week. He's another player who's played well in Florida. He's played well at Pebble Beach before. He's handled the win at the Shriners. Cantlay was playing really well up until last week, and he only missed the cut by one. So, if you can find a good number on him at plus 3,000 or bigger, I think that's fine. But Yeah, this is what happens during major weeks, man. Like some of the quality names just go under the radar, and by the end of the week, we're getting really good numbers. We're already starting to see that, especially in the betting. So,
Well, dating back to the last Open at Royal Liverpool in 2014, there was a certain Rory Mcllroy lifting the claret jug, and just think yesterday he birdied the last 2 holes to beat Rory McIlroy in the Scottish Open.
that
So
hurt. That hurt me a lot. Not gonna
what
lie.
you have a Bobby Mack ticket?
I did. Yeah. No, it was. I slept through it because I slept in. I stayed up late the night before, so I didn't even see it. Like I saw it on replay, but I didn't even get up to hedge or anything. I just let it play. I didn't think I'd be sweating Bobby McIntyre. I thought I'd be sweating Tommy Fleetwood, but I still hit him top 20, top 10, and like I had an each way on him. But so it was a good week for Bobby Mack. But yeah, it was a little frustrating to see how it went down because Rory, you have your guy in the clubhouse in terrible conditions with a one-shot lead. You figure you're going to get it done, but those were clutch shots by Rory, and definitely, I think that we're seeing those clutch shots at the top of the odds board right now have an effect because Rory's right now the favorite at plus 6,500 or sorry 650 versus Scheffler plus 700. So it's having an effect. I would say that you mentioned the players correlation off the top. I mean, both these guys have won players, but man, like the way Scheffler's hitting his irons right now, I could definitely see the argument there. The Open is such a finicky event. Definitely lends itself more to veteran players. I'm personally not betting either, but it would almost be a coin flip for me if you were to ask me to take which one. I know I'd probably just ride with Rory and the momentum, but man, like those guys are neck and neck for best player right now.
I mean, Roy. I mean, seemingly since May or June, Roy just hit another gear. Now the question is, can Roy get over the major jinx? Because seemingly every time Roy's in contention in a major, whether it be last year's Open or the last 2 U.S. Opens, seemingly finishes T2, T3, and he can't make a freaking putt. And by the way, what is Scottie Scheffler's biggest problem this year in not winning nearly what he should? Because every week Scottie's like T2 in this, T3 in this. And guess what Scottie Scheffler cannot do, which is the one issue I have with him potentially this week.
Yeah, no, I mean he can't putt. I mean he's like Luke List on steroids. I mean he hits his irons better than anyone at a historic rate right now, but the putter's been a problem for him. I mean he's shown a little bit better with just improvement with that club in a couple starts, but it's still not like it's not up there. Like I mean he could definitely just get worked on the greens by like guys like Cameron Smith, even Victor Hovland. So I guess the counter argument though is if Scheffler's putter does show up and catch fire, man, like this thing might be over quickly, right? I mean, so that's the counter argument. But yeah, right now that's kind of my argument with Rory. I mean, he seems to have found something last week. Will that translate into this week? It's tough to say, but Rory has definitely been a momentum player during his career. A guy who generally, puts together a couple top fives before he finally breaks through. But when he does break through, sometimes those wins can come in avalanches. So, like I said, I would slightly lean Rory here if you're choosing between the two. But man, talk about neck and neck for top player this week.
By the way, do you remember the last guy to win the Scottish Open and then the Open in consecutive weeks?
Of course I do. It was Phil Mickelson, 2013. That was and look, that was one of the best opens. I don't know if people remember that, but like I'm pretty sure Phil came in that year. He'd never done well in the links. He got the Scottish Open win, and then that was a crazy Open because I think it was Troon, maybe. I can't remember the venue, but it was which Muirfield.
Yeah,
Muirfield. So sorry, but it was just jam packed going into Sunday. Like there was like 10 guys, and they were all lead names. I think Scottie was up there. I think Hideki, Adam Scott. I mean, not Scottie Scheffler, obviously, but Hideki was in the mix. It's a couple other big names. I think DJ potentially, Westwood. That was a really good Open, and Phil just had a really great final round. Nobody expected him to win it. Everyone was like, "Oh, Phil can't play the links. He'll never win one." And then he kind of just popped. So, all the weird things that have gone on with Phil Mickelson. That was a really cool moment. He's had some of those, obviously at Kiawah Island too, but that's a major I'll always kind of remember just for all the people in contention and Phil just kind of coming out of nowhere to grab it.
And then how about that 2016 Open where he and Henrik Stenson decided
Right.
to just bliss
Yeah.
the whole course. I mean, Phil shot what a 65, and Stenson was just bombing everything, 3-wood, ball
Yeah.
striking everything within 2 feet.
Yeah. No, that's another one. You're right. There's basically a two-man duel like the entire weekend. It was crazy. And again, like the win kind of factors into some of these because I know, the draw kind of cut some people off that year, if I remember correctly. And it's funny because the last time we've had, the last two times the event's been at Hoylake, in 2006, I don't know if you remember or seen highlights, but the course just played so brown. It was dry. It was like 90-degree heat. There was no moisture on the course. It was a dirt bowl, and Tiger Woods just took a driving iron the entire event, took out all the trouble out of play, and just labeled the course with great iron play, and he won by a bunch of strokes. And then it was a complete opposite in 2014. It was wet, it was rainy, there was a wave split, and Rory just kind of bombed it around, took advantage of a soft course, got to 17 under, and kind of just waited out Sergio and Ricky. So interesting to see how it's going to play. It's definitely not going to be as dry. It's cooler weather. There's some moisture on the course. There's already been a bit of rain, I think, and it looks like the wind's going to be up. So I think a little bit more of a traditional Open this year. Could definitely see some wave splits. I don't think that the first 2 days, to me, look like anything crazy. But right now, Saturday could be a real event with some gusts up into the 35-mile-per-hour range. So I don't know if there's going to be a huge wave split. It's interesting, but what you might see is some guys, if I had to guess right now, save some bullets for Saturday because there could be some real movers in the early wave if this afternoon wind gets up. That's something I'm going to have my eye on right now.
What year's Open was stopped because literally it was so windy? I'm trying to remember. Was it 2008 or 2011?
That I don't remember. I remember the year Tiger had to go out, like shot 80 in like the monsoon, and they forced people to play in like the worst weather possible. But I don't remember when they've actually stopped it. I'm sure it's happened a couple times though. But usually they don't do the stoppages at the Open unless it's like you said, the ball's moving. So
I mean, they basically moved the tee ties from the Scottish Open last weekend because
they did. They kind of wimped out. I don't think they wanted to get a delay with the Open being the next week, if I had to guess. But yeah, they usually don't move the tee times for the Open. But
would you prefer a big time driver or ball striker? Because seemingly ball strikers done well.
Yeah,
with Cam Smith, Morikawa, Lowry, Molinari. I don't know what you call Jordan Spieth. He's a bit of everything, right?
yeah. I think the best way to put it would be, again, like it's not going to play. I mean, I think it's a course where like everyone can have success, but if you don't have like that A game, you're not going to compete. Like you need to have the high end iron play, but I don't think you necessarily need to just pummel it off the tee. You just need to not be a disaster off the tee. You need to take the out of bounds out. You need to be a little bit smart. But you can play a little bit back as long as you have the iron play. Like Tiger basically did that in 2006. Like I said, he was hitting iron off the tee all week, and he just managed his way around the course. If you have good, mid to long irons, it's kind of like sawgrass, and you're good around the greens. You can take the trouble out of the play if you can make up for it. So I would say just more like the technical ball strikers. Again, really just iron play, a little bit of around the green, and just guys who are trending well as pure ball strikers, but going to play a lot different than like we saw at the PGA where it was just the rough and you had to be as far down the tee as possible to even get it close to the green, and just take double out of play. And I think the other thing about this course is like there's going to be some guys who just they're going fine, and then it's just that one mistake, where it goes out of bounds or it goes into a gorse bush, and it's just like, it's a little bit randomness in that way. And I think the course is random, much like TPC Sawgrass is random, where guys can be going good and then they miss the green on 17 and it's like a triple. And I think you're going to see some of that this week where everything's fine and then all of a sudden it's not. So, like I said, high stress shots, and you really just need players who, confident with their irons more than anything to kind of get the job done.
And by the way, my advice: don't hit it in the bunkers. They all hazards in the UK. You will.
Yeah, I mean, look, just don't hit it in the bunkers. That is good advice. Yeah, big bunkers here. They've redone some of them, and they're big. Like they're not all of them are necessarily like impossible to get out, but there are some pop bunkers on the fairways that will just cost you a stroke. And they're not traditional U.S. greens. Some of them are going to cost you a stroke. So, like you said, they play more like penalty areas here, and I don't think Hoylake's going to be too much different.
Well, under the DK pricing, and usually Major pricing's pretty soft, but this week DraftKings up the ante. I don't think I've ever seen a 12K golfer at a major, but Scottie Scheffler is 12.5, Rory at 11.9, Rahm 11.2, Cameron Smith 10.7, Brooks 10.4, Xander 10.1, and Mr. Hovland at 10K. How do you think that Scotty being 12.5 is going to bounce the line? Also, for the first time, there are golfers below $6,000. So how do you think this pricing change will make it if you're playing the Millie Maker or one of these big time GPPs this week?
Yeah, so no, it's super interesting. So it's funny when the golf products actually initially got released on DraftKings, they did have sub 6K golfers. Like for a lot of years, for maybe the first 2 years, like you could get guys like as low as 5K. And they're kind of bringing that back a little bit here. Like you said, I don't know if it's going to be long term or just a one-off thing, but I think it's going to create some real interesting dynamics. I think, even with the sub 6K golfers, I think what you'll see is that Rory and Scheffler just may not be that heavily owned. I think Rory will definitely be the heavier owned of the two, but like I don't think they're going to be the most dramatically owned players. I think that this is also going to push more ownership into certain players who are like really values in the high 6K, low 7K range. Guys like Brian Harmon, maybe Robert McIntyre is going to have a ton of ownership. I've already seen Padraig Harrington popping in some projections, which sounds crazy, but it does make sense. And the reason is because some of these top guys are now priced more where you need to have the value to go along with it. And so these guys down below are going to get more attention. But I also think that like if you're using Scheffler and Rory, I don't think a lot of people are going to dip down in the 5K range. I just really think people are, these guys are all unplayable, or just don't feel like it's the right way to do it. Like I think more people will build with Rory and Scheffler with the 6K guys that I just laid out, but like a Scheffler and then a 5K golfer, I think is still going to be a really unique build for a lot of reasons. So I think it's a very interesting week, and I love it. I mean, I think it's cool. I like the pricing how they used to have it when they came out. I think this is better. So it gives you more options. You can still build balance if you want, but if you can find the right guy under 6K, I mean, you can potentially just start with Scheffler and another elite golfer and go from there.
Like I'm looking at the pricing right now. Matt Wallace is 6K.
Yep.
And who else would be one? Zach Johnson, 6K. How about Richard Bland being 6K? Remember his name?
Yeah, no, Richard Bland. I mean, is he still playing on Live? I feel like he was injured this year or something. I can't remember, but yeah, no, Blandy's had some good finishes. Oh no, he was sixth last week. He's back, so okay. I feel like he maybe took an event off or something, but Richard Bland at 6K can play. I like that call actually. If you're looking down there, I've been looking down below even these guys, and I mean, I think there's some names here that get by the cut. My favorite is probably Matthew Southgate at 5,600. Shot 61 in Denmark 2 weeks ago. He missed the cut last week in Scotland, but he actually gained, I think, 3.6 strokes on approach. So he's hitting the ball extremely well. He just lost a bunch of strokes putting. And the thing about Southgate is, he's got a T12, a T4, a T10 in his last 7 starts. So when he's been making the weekend, like he's been getting a lot out of it. And at 5,600, Like, this is a player with 2 top 20 finishes in the Open in his career. He's English. He's a really good links player. He won an amateur at St. Andrews in 2010. And, 5,600, like, if Southgate gets you over the weekend, I mean, he legitimately, he's playing well enough to potentially get like a top 20, which would just be massive. So he's kind of my target down there. There's a couple other names I don't hate. Jorge Campillo is another guy at 5,700. He was playing really well for a stretch. I think that, again, when you're just targeting upside, he made the cut last week too. I think Campillo is definitely someone you could take a look at. Charles Schwartzel has been a good Open player. He's been a good Sawgrass, some good results at Sawgrass. He's not playing great, but again, 5,800. I mean, this is a veteran course, a veteran just kind of event, really. If Charles gets you through the cut, I mean, he's another player who's just got top 20 upside. So I think there's a lot of playable.
And former Masters champ, seemingly Masters champ, maybe not the correlation from Augusta to Royal Liverpool compared to St. Andrews, but Masters champs tend to do well at the Open.
I mean, he's got a ton of experience. And like you said, I mean, he's a quality player still. He's only 38. I really wouldn't have trouble with him. There's probably a couple other names here that I'm glossing over too. Rosner. I don't know. It really depends how crazy you want to get. But I definitely think that like a Scheffler, Southgate kind of start, or Scheffler, whoever you like down there, kind of start, Schwartzel, whatever, is viable this week. And I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
I mean, Cage Lee 6,300.
And that's the thing. There's cheap guys, just in the low sixes, right? Like we got KH Lee.
Potty is 66.
Yeah, Podrick's up there. Thorbjorn Olesen, though. Perez, Griot. Those guys are all 66. I mean, Griot could, you can make the argument he should be 7K, 7,300. Like, I know his Open Championship record there's a lot of missed cuts, but there's a couple top 20s on there too, if I remember. So Olesen, same thing, up and down player, but he putted well last week. I really wouldn't have too much trouble taking a shot with either of those guys. They're very boom or bust. But like Southgate, like these guys make you the cut. I mean, sky's the limit because they are absolutely live to top 20, especially on a course like this where it's not PGA. They're not going to get bogged down by the rough. Like Olesen and Griot can compete on a course like this. So there are some names down here definitely worth your while.
How about Jordan Smith, T20 at the U.S. Open?
Jordan Smith's a good young player, man. 12th last week. I mean, I think Smith is one of those names that'll probably, with McIntyre, get some love this week for good reason. I think that Jordan Smith probably makes sense just as a Robert McIntyre pivot just on his own, because I do expect Robert McIntyre to potentially be one of the highest owned players this week. I mean, everyone just saw him come, almost win his National Open. Everyone knows he's a good links player, or think they know he's a good links player now because they saw him last week, almost win in Scotland. And he is a really good quality young player. I'm definitely not saying he's not, but Jordan Smith is quality as well. And if you're talking about McIntyre potentially being like 25% owned, maybe higher, and Jordan Smith being like a fourth the ownership of that, I'm not even sure. Like Jordan Smith would, to me, is like, I think it's a coin flip just straight up between those two players. No prices involved. So if you're getting a huge discount, like a quarter of the ownership, like Jordan Smith would have to be where it's at for me. So, we can argue about the talent, but if there's going to be that big a discrepancy in ownership, you're going to want to take Jordan Smith, at least in my opinion.
All right, quickly talk about your guy, Louis. Obviously, we know what's happened going to Live, but what do you think about Louis this week?
I mean, he's 6,900. Louis will probably get a little bit of love here just because it's the Open, and he does tend to play well here. But I mean, I've seen flashes from him on Live. He's not done well in any of the majors. Well, I guess he actually did. Oh no, he pulled out of the PGA, so he's really only played the Masters. He played well last week. I'm sure that'll get a few eyes on him. Again, like I guess I don't hate Louis as like the McIntyre pivot. I think Robert McIntyre, as good as he did for me last week, I think with just all the hoopla that he's going to get and all the love and potentially pushing to be the heaviest player in this range and potentially one of the top 3 owned players in like a milli maker on DraftKings, I do think Louis makes sense as a pivot play, but he's not the only player down here. I think Usti's probably got a nice floor, but even guys like Smith, Langasque, Romain Langasque, and other French players played really well. These guys have similar upside to Louis, so I don't think Usti should be your only stop here, but he's definitely one of like 2 or 3 players here who I do like as a pivot off of McIntyre. And I would definitely be looking to make that pivot. So,
all right, Geoff. Before I talk about my bets, I want to hear your bets because
yeah, for sure, man.
How many guys do you have on your betting card right now on this Monday evening?
So, I split them into long shots, and I got a couple guys circled that I'm going to be watching. But right now, I got some sort of parlay action done on Victor Hovland with Wimbledon, and I may add a little bit more to it. But I definitely didn't want to leave Hovland out of the betting card this week. I just think he's shown too well in the majors, and I just think coastal course where he's won before, Mexico, Puerto Rico, it just makes too much sense. I obviously have Tommy Fleetwood on the card plus 2,800. I'm happy with that. After that, again, I've got my eye on a few players. Potentially Patrick Cantlay. I may even potentially look to target Bryson, who again has played well in Florida. Like Bryson doesn't get thought about as an Open Championship player, but he was top 10 at this event last year. He's won in Florida before. He's actually finished top 5 at the Players. Like if I can get like 60-1 on Bryson or maybe even better, I will probably add that. The guy I did add, whose price I looked a couple hours ago, he's still at 100-1, or he was at 100-1 on DraftKings. It's Hideki Matsuyama. Actually, he's drifted down to plus 8,000. Even at plus 8,000, I just think Hideki's a little bit underpriced here. I added him earlier in the day as an each way just for the top 8. And I mean, he missed the cut in Detroit, but you look at what he's been doing before that. The ball striking has been immaculate. He's a player who's played the Open multiple times. I mentioned that 2013 Open Championship. He's been in contention before at these events. He knows what he's doing. He's playing really good golf, again, outside of one round at Detroit, which I don't really care too much about. 5th at the Players, 16th Masters. He's made the cut in all 3 majors. I just think the price, it just isn't really reflecting the eliteness of the player. We're talking about a major winner whose ball striking has been fantastic, and he's priced at double Shane Lowry, double Justin Rose. Like, no, I mean, Hideki should be like 5,000. Like he should probably be the same price as Justin Rose. I mean, he is way underpriced. I think he's just a great value at really anything above plus 6,000, I think.
Unfortunately, Florida doesn't have the legal bet, but I did make 2 bets before the Masters when I was in Illinois last week. Bet Victor Hovland. You know me. I think I love Victor Hovland, especially what he did at the Open last year, what he did at Augusta, what he did at the PGA, a win's coming in a major. And literally the last thing I did in Illinois was make a bet on Jason Day and 90-1. I think he's like 110 now, but I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not banking for much. I know Jason Day's been awful since winning the Byron Nelson, but I can't believe it. I saw him at 90 and I'm like, woof, sign me up.
I mean, I saw some people posting like 150-1. So I think it's a fine player to take a shot with. I really do. I mean, if his putter shows up, if he's feeling good out there, there's just a lot of upside with Jason Day. I took a shot with Siwoo Kim as well, plus 125. Sorry, 12,500. Siwoo I think he has got a ton of upside as well. Another player's winner. But the iron game from Siwoo has been consistent all year. The ball striking with Siwoo, great all year. We know he can play around the green. If he brings some confidence with that long putter he's using now, or just find some confidence on the greens, period, I mean, this guy can absolutely compete. We saw him get up there in the Memorial, bounce back from double bogey after double bogey with just a bunch of birdies. I just think he's got way too much upside to be ignored at like 125 to 1. He's played well all year, in my opinion. So that's a long shot. I took a shot with Chris Kirk today as well, plus 20,000 or something in that area. He played well last week. Again, winner in Honda. Chris Kirk was like top 20, I think, at this event too in 2014. So, I mean, at the very least, has some good vibes coming from that. But another long shot. And then I mentioned Matthew Southgate already, but Matthew Southgate top 20 on DraftKings is like plus 1,000. I may even try and find a better number than that, but definitely just threw a couple of dollars on Southgate for fun. But yeah, those are kind of the main guys I've targeted thus far. I got my eye on Cantlay, Bryson. We'll see what else transpires, but I definitely like the, Hideki, Siwoo, and Kirk. I mean, I think those guys make a lot of sense for kind of some different reasons, but the prices on all of them just seem out of whack to me a little bit, and want to take advantage. So,
I mean, Justin Thomas 80 to 1. I mean, if he could fall. Only problem with JT right now is
there's a lot of problems with JT right now.
If he fell off a boat, he wouldn't end up in the English Channel in the North Sea.
I think, to me, like I looked at Justin Thomas, but I just like Hideki more. He's got a lot of open experience, man. And like I said,
more consistent this year. Like JT's
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with JT, you're basically, you're hoping like everything comes together. With Hideki, I think you're just really just hoping that the putter just wakes up. And I think that is, we're talking one thing versus like three things for JT. So I do like the number that we're getting on Hideki. Like I said, with Hideki too, like he's shown us in the majors, like he's played well. He hasn't popped. He hasn't like necessarily competed or anything, but he's played well. Justin Thomas has had like one good start. I mean, he has not played well in any of those events. So, to me, like it was a pretty easy decision to go Hideki over Thomas at those same prices.
All right, Geoff, we've done all open preview, looked at weather, look at bets, look at open history. Who is your one and done for the 2023 Open at Royal Liverpool, Hoylake, whatever you call it?
Hoylake. I'm going to go with, I'm torn between picking, like, again, for a one and done. It would probably be between, if I had Scheffler or McIlroy, obviously we burn them, but we'll talk about it a little bit more from my betting perspective. I would go with Hovland or Tommy. I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood. I just feel like he's been crescendoing to something big. I really think the conditions here are going to go well with him. I think it's a good course for him as well. I think it's going to take some of the power players out of, just out of their element a little bit and give a guy like Fleetwood just a little bit of a better chance. So I'll go with Tommy.
I'll take VH. Seemingly, what is it? The last, trying to think, since Ernie Els won the 2012 Open, I believe the last 9 Open winners have been first-time Open champs. Well, you know what? That number's going to be 10. With Victor Hovland lifting the claret jug.
I could see it. Absolutely, man. I mean, he has played so well in the majors. Gotta love the setup, another seaside venue for Vic.
Played well at Pebble, played well all over the world. And you know what? If Victor Hovland wins a major, it's probably going to be the Open.
I think it probably does represent his best chance right now. I mean, I think he could definitely get it done at, another one of any of them really. But I think you're right. Like right now for him, the Open's probably, I think sets up the best.
All right, Geoff, thanks for hopping on, and hopefully maybe Canada can lift the Stanley Cup just like one of these guys will lift the claret jug this weekend.
Yeah, maybe in 2050 or something we'll get another one here. I'm not holding my breath, man. Thanks for the shout out to Canada though. Appreciate it.